And I love that this talk is being brought through by these next two beauties, because KamalaDevi and her husband Michael have been married for over 15 years or so. They have a son who's 10. And many of you may have seen them around Encinitas or around the world sharing so much about their love and their journey of love in polyamory. They were on Showtime TV series, really like just being full out expression of the embodiment of a thriving polyamorous relationship. They are the co-founders of Tantra Theaters, so they're advocates for Tantra. They work with ISTA. I think I know KamalaDevi does. I don't know if Michael's part of it, but I think they both are. Which hopefully we'll hear a little bit more about that tonight. So I really am so grateful for what's to come, because it's a little different than what we're used to hearing from you guys. And I got a chance to, Matt and I actually both got a chance to speak with them beforehand, and we could really feel the passion coming through on this topic around bringing greater peace in partnership to bring greater peace on the planet. So who's a yes to that? Okay, so please welcome KamalaDevi and Michael McClure.
I'm going to send this around too. It's a clipboard, as you can see. It's for a free gift that we're giving. It's basically a call that we're going to be doing. If you're in partnership.
Specifically for couples.
So yes, send it around.
And are we good on the live streaming? Excellent. So hello, Soul Tribe. It's so nice to be here with family. I'm KamalaDevi.
And I'm Michael McClure.
And as Betsy mentioned, we're actually way past 15 years. So exciting. This Valentine's, we're celebrating our 17-year anniversary. And it's not just any marriage. It's an open marriage. It's kinky. It's poly. It's shamanic. It's laden with lots of challenges, including having a preteen. So this has not been an easy path. I would actually say that the first 13 years were like constant fighting and challenge. I mean, we're very, very different people. So we were butting heads. And sometimes the bickering was really superficial, like who's doing the dishes and when you called too late, or one time he got a haircut and I was livid that he didn't consult with me. I mean, the kind of stuff that you say, what's going on? But then we would spiral down into the core wounding. So our arguments actually seemed like they were surface, but they became about
things like you're too emotional,
you're not spiritual enough,
I want more sex.
You want too much sex, I didn't respect him, or he didn't listen to me. Like, these were core wounds. Does this sound familiar? Sometimes I actually fought with him because he didn't fight with me enough. I'd be like, you're not passionate enough. You're not feeling your feelings. We were existing. We're sort of sub-existing in relationship at the level of fight or flight or freeze. Like, our lizard brain would get activated and we'd go into this like just tearing each other down. And then after the reality show and after all the stresses, our marriage actually burned down. Like, we crashed and burned, and it was like charred. It was terrible. It was a horrible time. And we had a real moment of truth. And a couple of people in the room, I'm looking at James, like how many nights I spent crying, like, oh, it's over. Or we could double down and we could do the work. And it was personal growth work, and it was work with ISTA, and it's work with each other. And after 2 years, from the ashes came a phoenix. And what arose was this immense, profound partnership that is so peaceful. Like, we both have inner peace, and we have peace in our relationship. And sometimes I pinch myself and I'm like, I teach thousands of couples. I didn't know this was possible. So we want to share with you some of these tips on how to save yourself the 2 years of work and take the shortcuts.
So how many of you, when you get into your fight, you fight and it's fight, flight, or freeze, of course. So when you're in that conflict, how many of you are fighters? Okay. And how many of you are flighters? You make a run for it. Okay. A few more. And then how many of you are the freezers? That was me too. I'd go into the freeze. So, okay, yeah, thanks. So before Kamala and Debbie and I got together, I was with a girlfriend up at Yosemite. And we were backpacking out in the backcountry, and there's tons of bears up there. And so we were out by ourselves, and this is back before they had those bear canisters where you put your food, right? So we set up our camp, and I put our food on a rope and threw it over a tree branch, and we settled in for the night. We went into our tent, and the whole time I'm listening for every little snapping twig and everything that's happening out there. I'm just like on pins and needles. And then I heard it. Crashing through the bushes. I'm like, oh shit. And then I heard it walking around our campsite. Over by the food. And then it came over right next to the tent. And I was like, oh shit. And it was eating something. And whatever it was eating, it had bones, because it was my... And I was like, fuck! And we just kind of laid there in terror, and then finally it wandered off, and I was like, oh shit. But I didn't sleep all night. I was like, every freaking twig, is it coming back? Is it coming back? And so in the morning, as soon as the light came up, I'm like, unzip the tent, I go out, like, look at our food, and it's still there. Okay, so I was looking for bear tracks, and I couldn't find any bear tracks. And then I went over to where the carcass should be, and blood, looking for blood, and this carcass, and there's nothing there. And I was like, fuck, that was weird. And so we packed up our tent, and we're getting ready to get back on the trail. And I was starting to put my boots on, and I'm like, fuck, the shoelaces, those little plastic things on the ends, were all shredded and torn up. And I was like, fuck, there was no bear. There was a mouse eating my shoelace tips right next to my ear in the tent. So what I heard had nothing to do with reality whatsoever. And I'll tell you, in relationships, there are no bears. It's all mice. Unless you're with an axe murderer or someone who's violent, of course. But what I learned is to give my partner the benefit of a doubt. Okay? And so whenever I hear something that might put me into fight, flight, or freeze, like let's say she's angry at me, so I would say, okay, she's not angry at me. She's angry at maybe her childhood, abuse that she had when she was a child. Or if she's angry, that I turn that into, well, maybe she's not angry. Maybe she's scared. Or she's angry, but maybe I could make some other interpretation of it. And whatever that interpretation was one that would bring us closer together. Okay, and it made it possible. Maybe she's low blood sugar. Maybe she's on her period. So, yeah, so we would do those interpretations. Any interpretation that would make us closer together and more harmonious.
I appreciate his giving me the benefit of the doubt. When we coach, a lot of relationships come because they're at point of breakdown, and the vast majority of breakdowns and fights are because there have been boundaries that have been crossed. And so I'm going to invite you to get really clear on what your boundaries are. Too often we hallucinate that because our partner loves us, they're going to scientifically know what our boundaries are, and then we get mad when they cross them. So instead, I'm going to offer you the stoplight. And so what it means is you decide what are the red lights. Like, what are the real conditions on which your relationship would cease to exist? What are the deal breakers, the bottom lines? And ask yourself, like, is that if my partner sleeps with somebody else? Is it if they lie to me? Maybe it's substance abuse or physical abuse? Like, what really is worth, you know, the cost of the relationship. And then the green lights, which is what supports the relationship, what's really important to you, what nurtures you. And you can look at like, hey, I really need date nights. I need to have, you know, sex this often, or this really works for me. And just take inventory of what lights you up, what brings out your best. And then this bizarre zone between the green and the reds, what do you do when you get to a yellow light? You slow down, that's right, some of us. Unless you're avoiding an accident, you really want to go slow, be careful. So making a list of yellow lights is looking at what are the things maybe I want to try or I'm not sure or uncomfortable, like maybe you having, you know, your partner going out with an ex-lover, or having a naked massage from someone, the things that like maybe I'd be okay with, but let's process it and talk about it and really not rush through it. So by taking that inventory, doing it yourself, having your partner do it, then coming together and actually making sure you're on the same, you know, sheet of music, you avoid a lot of the challenges. And then you can use the red, yellow, green metaphor when you're actually in argument or debate. If it's starting to get like really edgy, you can just say, yellow light, let's slow down. Or if you're really fighting and you can't handle it anymore, you notice yourself going into your lizard brain, then you can say red light. It just means drop it. Let's take space. So you don't say anything irreparable. So you don't like tear each other down and keep going at it. So that's another key piece.
So a couple of years ago, we did some work with Tony Robbins, The Date with Destiny in Florida, and he had said this thing. He said that you can keep yourself in a beautiful state. And I was like, okay, what is that? And I kept this kind of riddle in my head for a while. And the way it related to us in relationship was, well, for money, for instance, you can be broke and you can, you know, make it put you in a bad state, or you can be broke and you can still be in a good state, all right, or a beautiful state. And in relationship, I noticed the same thing. You know, I could be affected by what KamalaDevi says, and you know, I could be in a shitty mood for days, like Mark. You know, for 10 days I'd be like, you know, ruined. Or she could say these things and I could stay in a beautiful state. And just being conscious of that made it possible for me to start, you know, checking myself and staying in a beautiful state. And I would do things like, you know, go out and run and take care of myself, you know, to keep myself in a beautiful state. But what I noticed was when I was in a beautiful state, even if she wasn't, soon she would react by not going into those states as quickly. So just staying in a beautiful state was something that helped us.
And one of the ways to do this is actually a lake metaphor. So I know I happen to be the more emotional one. I'm Latina. I have like these, I blame it on my ancestors, right? Like I'm working through my ancestral pain. I get really intense. And I'll just say, oh, I'm in the lake. You know, maybe I'm frustrated or grumpy. And he's a kind of a rock of a nature of a person. So he stays on shore. And when he's on shore, it's easy for me to see where the dry shore is and to shake myself off and to, you know, get back into harmony. But sometimes, and it used to be that I would dive into the lake and he'd dive in trying to save me. And then we're both like totally floundering around and nobody's on shore. So it's helpful now, which, you know, of course, we want to keep ourselves resourced. But if you notice you're not resourced, to say, hey, I'm a little close to the water. Or to, you know, for either one of us to say, I'm in the lake. And be like, okay, let me know when you're out. Or I'll be right here when you're ready. And that way we're not both going under, and it keeps our buoyancy.
So we've done a lot of work in our relationship, especially around a couple of communities around peace and free love, ZEG in Berlin and Tamara in Portugal. And the founder of these organizations, a man named Dieter Doom, had a saying. He said, there can't be peace on earth while there's war in love. And so we were in Israel this past fall, and we realized, we were doing work with this, very deep shamanic work, and we realized that we're not in war in our love anymore. We realized that we have that peace. And suddenly, I got so excited because I realized we could swap that equation around, and our harmony and our love relationship could lead to world peace. And that became our purpose. And so we declared on that ridge in the Judean desert, close to Jordan, right by the Dead Sea, that was our purpose, and that's what we've wanted to bring.
Particularly powerful because it's one of those war-torn areas in the world, and we really saw it, and it came like a message. And we invite you in your partnership to look at what is the purpose that's bigger than the two of you. Everyone in this room, we're so privileged, and when we find partnership and we say, okay, we're gonna work on us, that's wonderful, but if we can dedicate ourselves to something even bigger, and work on us like transpersonally, then it's actually a blessing. The love it gives back. So I invite you, it may not be peace, it might be like, your CBD company or whatever it is, that's a shared vision, is to work together as evolutionary partners.
Mm-hmm. That's a new paradigm partnership.
Yeah.
And if you haven't signed up on the clipboard, we are going to be having a 1 hour talk about relationship for people that are in relationship and want to go into that deep dive. And that's a free talk, a gift from our gift to you. We didn't have any CBD candy, sorry.
But I think the note on our wanting to share more has to do with, we wouldn't be here, like we wouldn't have this success story if we didn't have you. Like, it takes a tribe. We all know it takes a village to raise a kid, but to raise a partnership, you need community, you need support, and so we need to really be supporting each other and talking about it. I mean, really, honestly, it was having a circle one time, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, when Michael said, hey, I feel abused in the relationship. And it was me being like, wow, the community saw him say that, I better stop abusing him. It's like, whoa, that kind of accountability takes you up a notch. So I do, as a last tip, encourage everybody to surround themselves with other couples or people who are talking about the deep matters of their heart, not these superficial conversations and looking good and what are the Jones doing, but what's real for you is gonna elevate both of you.
Listen. If there are a couple of questions.
What would you do with with a partner that continually brings up the past? Like how do you get past that? Like how do you kind of put the past influence?
It's a good.
And can you repeat it for
So the question is, what do you do when your partner is continuously bringing up the past? And so I want to just bring attention to how frequent it is when we're in relationship and we get an opportunity to talk to relationship experts and we say, I've got a question, and my question is about my partner's behavior. And I'm not saying that there's not a problem there, but really our domain of what we can change and control is ourselves. So if I had a partner who was bringing up the past, I'd say, well, what am I making that mean? Why is that hurting me? What can I do so that their being in the past isn't like dragging me down all the time? Because really, once we do the self-work, we show up and something almost alchemical will change because we've done the work, we work on it, and somehow your partner's on a different frequency because we've done that work. I think.
Question?
In your deepest, darkest depth of relationship, where it was the darkest time, you dug out of it.
This one is a masochist. She wants to hear where we bleed.
What was it?
So what's the hardest of it?
The deepest, darkest point of your relationship when you talked about being on the reality show.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Like what
What?
was the thing?
What was it? So we were living with Rachel, who's for about a year and a half.
If you don't know Rachel and Booster, they're awesome relationship coaches too. So they're she was a live-in lover.
Yeah, Rachel was with us, lived with us, was on the second season of the show with us, and we got into a jealousy issue where KamalaDevi had raging jealousy and basically a mental breakdown.
Yeah, yeah. So what? We she wanted to see us. She's like, I saw. I want everyone else to see it. In our triad, I had the perception that Michael was better off with her, and I had the perception that I'm no longer I'm obsolete. She is 10 years younger. You know, she's really bright. I'm just like, okay, you know, I see this. This is where this is going. This is leading me, and that my attachment injury came up. And if anybody's had an attachment injury, it feels like you're gonna die. Like you literally feel like you're dying. So I started hallucinating and I just lost my shit. And he and Rachel nurtured me through it. Yeah, through a lot of work.
And we've redeveloped that relationship. So she got together with Booster. Booster is basically in our family now. And I even got a chance to play with Booster when we were in Sweden this summer. So I'm officially bisexual now.
Okay, because last question. Do we have time for a final question?
Betsy, are we okay on one last question?
Yes, I was just curious, you mentioned your experience with the Tamara Institute, and I'm wondering, was there a specific ingredient or nutrient from that experience that's lacking in today's relationship culture? And if you could speak to that, what
Absolutely.
benefit our current culture really.
Thank you. So I think our culture is pathological because we live in nuclear households. So the structure of now you're in private, separate marriages, and this little bubble exists independent of other marriages, and all people can do is compare each other and think that there's something such as normal. That's sick. And what Tamara does is intentional community where people come together, like in church, and talk about relationships and jealousy and challenges, and you realize that what's on the inside of everyone is really essentially humanity. And then you're not in the illusion of separation.
Thank you.
Okay, blessings.
Yeah, blessings.
Wow, so good. I hope you guys are taking notes. Who has their notebooks and are taking notes? Good. There's so much good stuff here. So thank you guys so much. That was really awesome. So I wanted to share just something that inspired me from their talk. Like I mentioned before, this is Matt and I's passion.